if you think about a lot of SaaS companies, like they exist in this world where if people could create their own personalized CRM, their own personalized sales workflow, their own personalized warehouse management tool, their own personalized order delivery platform, wouldn't they rather do that than use someone else's off-the-shelf platform,
Yeah.
right? That's not quite suited their business. I think in 10, 20 years, many SaaS businesses are gonna feel pain from no code because we're gonna let people build their own, platform.
Yeah, I mean, welcome to The Future is No Code. My name is David. I'm joined by Brian Luerssen of Draftbit. If you guys don't know what Draftbit is, it's an incredible no-code native app builder. You can build it straight in the browser, drag and drop. They have components. And they also kind of go heavily into the ability to export the code, see the code. So a little hybrid. I'm sure we'll get into that conversation a little bit. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks. Excited to be here.
Yeah. Anything you want to add about Draftbit, where you guys are right now, those kind of things?
Yeah, I mean, we've been building Draftbit for a little while. We're in beta. We sort of think of ourselves as like, a little bit of like a power user tool where you want to involve devs into the devs and non-devs working together. Like that's kind of how we're building Draftbit, to kind of be a collaborative platform between developers. And so it's interesting to talk about no code because we definitely believe in parts of the no code, but we also we give you code, and so we live in this weird gray area. So it's
that's definitely one of the reasons I was excited to kind of get your perspective on this whole thing and see how it'll impact the traditional dev process, which we'll get to in a little bit, versus this new kind of no code process that's happening. How are these things going to mesh together? Will be kind of exciting. All right. So what we like to do, we like to start off with kind of the intro stuff here. So when did you get into no code? What made you start Draftbit? Kind of give you background there.
Yeah, I mean, so we started Draftbit in 2018, but I think me personally, I've been doing some version of these types of things for a while. I mean, I've worked in a lot of different industries, but all during that time, I think, embracing no code. Also, you look back at then when I was first getting into the internet, building websites with Dreamweaver, and even fiddling with Visual Basic back in the day, and all different things like that. I think it's all these are all different variants. But yeah, we started Draftbit 2018, and we've been building ever since. We're in beta, hoping to leave beta very soon. And
nice, exciting.
Yeah, we got started building Draftbit because we started the company as a startup, but my two co-founders, we started building a different business. We were building a mobile app, and I have two technical co-founders who are engineers, and they're great, but we also were sort of just frustrated, even for them, how hard it was to get the mobile app kind of our first version out the door. It felt like it was we're just building.
Yeah, it's definitely been interesting to see even developers in this space, because you might know part of this, but you don't know other parts, especially of the native.
Yeah, and even if you know a lot, you can still get frustrated at man, it should be easier to get this thing out the door, right? You know what I mean? In some regards, you're more frustrated because you're this should be better. I know it should be better. Yeah, I mean, so we started building. So we ended up working on that other app business for about 6 months, and for a bunch of reasons that business didn't make sense. And so when we actually turned our attention, to figuring out what we were going to do next, we realized what we really were passionate about is man, it should have been much easier for us to get our first version out the door. Shouldn't have been much easier for us to iterate on. And we specifically, again, this leads into how we think about Draftbit specifically, is we wanted to have something where my technical co-founders, Peter and Donald, could work with me, sort of a semi-technical person, and with our designer. So we wanted to be able to all kind of work together. And that's kind of why Draftbit is building something that kind of lives a little bit in the developer land with code, but also in the no code land with visual development. So that's kind of fed into how we got started.
Yeah. Awesome. So that kind of, that's a nice little segue into kind of the next main question, which is a little bit of, debate. I'm really fascinated to see everyone's response here about, so what is your definition of no code, I guess? And
Yeah.
A good way of always phrasing is, what do you consider in no code space? What do you not consider to be in the no code space?
Yeah, it's tricky because it's such, in my world, it's such a gradient. Like it's
Yeah.
not a clear A or B. I mean, just as an example, right? Like Airtable launched yesterday code snippets in their Airtable, right? I think like as of 2 days ago, people would have been like, Airtable, great, no code, big example, like you can build a database, no coding required, blah 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 blah. And now they're like, and we've added code, right? So it's like it's super interesting. I think the lines get blurred, and I think, there's low code and there's no code and there's visual development and there's blah 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 blah. I think, like, frankly, like, again, I'm a little bit jaded. I think the terminology is one thing, but I think what I really think about is like, I think about this whole space as like, I don't have a good term for it, but I think of it as helping everyone build, right? Not just like, I think if you look back at software before now, and that's, I guess there's always been the examples, right? We talked about Dreamweaver and some of these things, but I think the reason this thing is exploding is because there's going to be in the next couple of years, going to be 1 billion people that grew up using software, and they don't just want to be beholden to people that can create software, right? The 80 million software engineers in the world, they want to create their own software. And I think that's the value, is like enabling the 1 billion people on the planet who use software to be able to create their own, right? Whether they're technical, semi-technical, non-technical, whatever level of technical they are, there's going to be a tool and a platform that will help them actually build their own software. I think that's the thing. I think it's like, that's the thing that gets me excited, regardless of the terminology. It's about like, it's about empowering, the people. So
awesome. Yeah, no. And let's see, so some interesting things there were like, you definitely were still kind of going with like software being like the end result of this, whether we call it no code or visual, whatever. So do you feel the end result kind of has to be software for it to be in this space? Like, for example, do you consider like something like a MailChimp where you're sending an email, like, is that in the no code space, or is that then outside of it because the core component of what you're saying really is software?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's hard. I mean, I think there is, I wouldn't consider, I think critical to the tools that we're all building is you're building your own, with our users are building their own products, right? They're building their own tools. I think there's a big difference between that and SaaS services. Like MailChimp is a SaaS service. Now, I guess you're maybe building your own templates and things inside of that. So there is, again, there's a gradient there. But I think, like, I really think of it as building your own products in the same way that website builders like are kind of in the no code space, but they're also kind of not, because you're just building a website. You're not really building a product. Now, in some cases you are, right?
Yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, no, it's nice. The little nuance there. Let's see. So, and the space hasn't always been called no code, right? So like, when do you think that started? And do you even have a person who you would like credit with starting it?
Oh, I don't know. I don't have a person. I don't know. Love to know who created that, frankly. It's funny because when we started building, we also, like, in 2018, we didn't even, that's not that long. We didn't really call it that. We were just like, I just want to help people build mobile apps faster, right?
Yeah.
Like, I want to make it easier. We've heard the word visual, or the phrase visual development before, and there's like good things and bad things with that. I mean, the problem is, like, not all the no-code tools are really visual platforms either, right? Like, is Zapier? I guess Zapier is like a visual logic creator and some of these things, but I think there's part of that. I think that's probably also limiting in its own ways. But yeah, I don't know. The terminology's hard, man. I think it's like, I think each company will build its own brand and its own kind of like, I think the low code or no code stuff is less important than, like I said before, like the just empowering people to build real products and give them kind of like leverage.
So one final question on this, which maybe is like less relevant to kind of things you're saying, but an interesting kind of subconscious debate we have going on in the community between, is it like no dash code or is it no space code? Like, are you in a camp of one of those spaces or dashes kind of camps?
Yeah, frankly, like, I'm probably, because of Draftbit, because we're like no code with code, no code that gives you code. I don't know. Like, I have a hard time. I'm probably not the best Draftbit technically is probably better suited in the low code category, which, again, I don't know if that even, I don't know why there's a division, frankly, between these, but no, I think in the long run, all platforms are going to want to support some version of code. And frankly, the reality is, any way you slice it, underneath the hood, we are building code
there is
in
code.
different ways.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It does exist.
Yeah.
And so I don't think it's like, I think that these terminologies are, I don't care what terminology you use. I just want to help get as many people involved in like whatever makes it most accessible for people is what gets me excited.
Cool. All right. So that's a nice little segue again into like kind of our main section here. You know, how is this really going to impact everybody? And obviously we have a few different groupings here. So we'll start the first one, which is businesses, right? So how is this going to impact your entrepreneurs, your startups? How is it going to impact small businesses? And then, you know, how is this going to impact your medium to large enterprise type companies?
I think it's going to have big impacts in this category for sure. I mean, entrepreneurs, you can start a business for cheaper. You can iterate faster. You don't have to raise money as early, or you can bootstrap businesses. I mean, I think that's huge, right? Yeah. I also think it empowers, up until now, if you wanted to build a software business, you had to really you had to be fully engrossed in the software world, right? Yeah. And there's all these startups that struggle because they're like, man, we're really a logistics company, or we're really a food company, but we have to learn software. Yeah. Like that's really hard, right? Because then you have to be good at two things, right? And so I think that's the other benefit of no code platform is for all these platforms. Like you can, whether you're an entrepreneur or a small business or a large enterprise, you can be good at your core business, and no code tools just let you kind of like, skip becoming an expert in all things software, right? Yeah. And that's a really, and or maybe not skip completely, but delay, which is also super valuable.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I think it's huge. The other thing, I think small businesses, I think the ability to create personalized software is like super interesting and something we don't talk about enough. Like, I think, not to poo-poo SaaS companies, because we are SaaS companies. I'm a SaaS, we're going to draft a SaaS company. Yeah. But the flip side is if you think about a lot of SaaS companies, like they exist in this world where if people could create their own personalized CRM, their own personalized sales workflow, their own personalized warehouse management tool, their own personalized order delivery platform, wouldn't they rather do that than use someone else's off-the-shelf platform? Yeah. Right? That's not quite suited their business. I think in 10, 20 years, many SaaS businesses are going to feel pain from no code because we're going to let people build their own, platform.
Yeah. I mean,
stuff. I think that's really cool.
I think that's also still obviously a good thing, but you think about the amount of backlog features at SaaS companies and like how they're end up being driven by the loudest, I guess, customer. I think that'll kind of totally flip that on its head.
Well, the other thing is, sometimes those big SaaS platforms, they become so bloated because they're building everyone's features, but not everyone needs every set of feature, right? And so the beauty of our, maybe what you really need is 100 very simple platforms, but 100 very different simple platforms, right? Yeah. And so people can kind of build their own from templates and from examples and kind of tweak and make it there. So yeah, I mean, super excited. I think just to hit on enterprise, I think enterprise is an interesting space because they've been playing in low code and no code for longer than anybody, right? Mm-hmm. There have been platforms around for much longer. Enterprise, they waste so much money just trying to build product every day, right? Yeah. And we hear stories of this is like Fortune 50 companies, right? Fortune 100 companies. We talk to them, people are like, yeah, you know what? We spent $2.5 million to release a prototype that didn't work. Yeah. And you're just like, what? Like, in startup land, that's like crazy. You hear those stories occasionally, but like you can usually get your product out the door, right?
You usually get one customer.
Yeah, but in enterprise, I think there's huge opportunities for people who are inside of enterprises to make a name for themselves by kind of cutting through that nonsense. And I think being able to say, listen, actually fulfill the promise of, listen, we're going to operate a little bit like a startup inside this company. We're not going to have access to engineering resources or IT resources or consulting resources. We're going to have a team of 3 or 4 people. And we're just going to make progress quietly. And then we're going to, people can make their careers in large enterprises by cutting through the bureaucracy. And I think the no-code platforms are a huge tool to allow people in big companies to have big, big impact.
Yeah. I'm definitely excited for that. Okay, so I'm most excited to hear from you from this next kind of group, and that's kind of the traditional tech group. Obviously, this is you and your founder's relationship for sure. So what do you think this is going to mean for traditional developers today, UX designers, and, PMs? Like, how is this going to impact, that our tech process?
Yeah, I think like fundamentally, it depends on the platform you're talking about, or the space and the world, like the different segments inside the no code place. But a lot of people are like, oh, was my job going to get displaced? And I don't think so, because I think, these platforms are coming about because there's such a shortage of software engineers and designers and product managers, and everyone wants to build stuff. So I don't think specialists are going away. I think specialists will always be necessary to build something that's great, right? But they may not be needed to build something that's basic, right? And I think that's the flip side, is for those people, for designers, for developers, for product managers, the good news is they can also get out of doing the boring stuff.
Yeah.
Right. They, we talk to developers all day long who are like, yeah, we want to try out Draftbit because, frankly, I want to get out of pixel pushing. I don't want to be the person that changes the button color to purple or changes the marketing text to this and that. Like, let other people in our organization do that, like they do in Webflow or WordPress or Shopify or all these other kind of existing predecessor companies. And I think that's like the future of no code, is empowering, developers to focus on the things they're good at and not worry about the things that are kind of, below their pay grade, frankly, or whatever, however you want to cut that. So, yeah.
What do you think will happen with the kind of like dev designer handoff? Like, do you imagine that? Because, right now it's like product managers have a planning meeting. You have to, here it is. Here's all the specs for it. So how do you imagine that kind of changing?
There was a guy, I forget his name. Maybe we can put it in the notes or something. I can find it. But he wrote this article about how, like, they talk about Slack as a collaboration tool and all these other collaboration tools that add comments and add workflows and add, checkpoints, all this stuff, and how those are like false collaboration, because they're not actually collaboration. They're communication layers. But true collaboration actually is working together. Yeah. Right.
And so, on the same
that's
thing.
I think exactly right. And so that's what I think is most interesting here, because what you actually get with the no code world is you can actually get true collaboration, and you can skip. Like right now, in most 98% of software companies or companies that are building software, everyone else in the organization is just queuing up work for engineers, right? In some way or shape or form, like you're doing design work and you're creating stories and you're creating marketing content, but it's all just like goes into a tracker for an engineer to implement in your application. And like, that is like, that's so inefficient, right? Like, why not just allow people to affect that change directly, right? And I think that's true collaboration is building together. I think, like, I like to tell the story of WordPress, which is like, if you actually think about, there's lots of problems with WordPress, but one of the reasons WordPress has been so successful is because in reality, what WordPress enables is different types of users to build the website or the blog together collaboratively. The designers do the themes and the templating, the content managers and the bloggers write the posts, the engineers do the hosting and the security, and the marketing people do that plugins and that. And like, but they're not telling each other what to do. They're just working together collaboratively building the website. And that's what I think no code and low code tools enable, is like, we can all actually work together, truly work together, and build stuff together, not communicate about, hey, I've queued up a bunch of work for you to do, right? Which is like what we have today. So.
Yeah, no, that's cool. All right, let's see. Kind of the next group is in the consulting realm. So what do you think this is going to mean for more of your like traditional dev shops today? What do you think this is going to mean for, I guess, more of your kind of freelancers today, or maybe people that aren't even doing apps today? And then on the flip side, what do you think this is going to mean for non-dev consultants, even like your business consultants?
Yeah, it's interesting. So we have, for Draftbit, a bunch of these people are our customers. So it's interesting. We kind of see both sides of this coin. I think the way I think about this is like, I think bad dev shops are going to go away. I think good dev shops, good agencies, good consultants will be better, faster, stronger, more powerful, right? And like better than they are today, because fundamentally, like, the difference is, I think the way we actually used to talk about this is, all the dev shops that just bill you based on like hourly, those are actually staffing firms. They're not actually really dev shops, right? And I think those things will go away, because I think they, like no code will just eat into their ability to kind of overcharge you for a billable hour of an engineer's time, right? Like, you won't need to pay for something. But I think there's a ton of small ad agencies with very creative people, or small design agencies with creative people, or very smart consultants who know a specific industry, who will be empowered to build their own tools instead of contract with others.
Yeah.
And I think they become better consultants and better agencies because they can, again, directly build what they are. So like, you know, I say this, but like, I think there are millions of dev shops out there that I think are adding very little value and are very kind of, you know, they're just not very good at, frankly, building anything. They're just staffing firms. Those, I think, they're gonna feel the pain in the same way that like website builders, like who pays people to build their website these days? Yeah. Like, I mean, people do.
Some people do,
but like 80% of websites are built on, like, you know, Webflow and Wix and Squarespace and Shopify and all these things. Like, you don't pay some random dev shop. You pay creative people to design it. Right. You pay smart people to think about it, but you don't pay, you know, 100 engineers to build HTML anymore, like you did before, right? Like that's crazy. And I think the same thing will be true with applications, you know, in 5 years or 10 years, because you will still need specialists and agencies and things. But I think just the random 80% of basic needs will be met by no-code and low-code platform, for sure.
Yeah. What do you think about the non-dev consultants? You know, people that aren't even in kind of this space right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like we've met a bunch of these people. Like, again, if you're an expert at warehouse management and you think part of what you need is like a tool to help you manage warehouse, like I think software is going to be everywhere, right? If that's not obvious, like I think software is going to touch everything. And so if you're completely outside of the software world, this is an opportunity for you to get in the software world and learn it, right? And get accessibility. I think if you're a non-dev consultant, you say, well, I don't really need software, then I think you've got your head in the sand or whatever. You're missing the ball. But I think it's, again, I don't know. I mean, I think it's empowering, frankly, for those people to make their businesses better. And if they don't have a good business because they're not smart or they're not thinking, they're not adding value, then I think they should go away. Yeah. Sorry.
All right. So the last group. What about society? So like, what is this going to mean for, you know, our personal lives? What is this going to mean for kids, you know, economic disparity, all that kind of stuff?
I think, I mean, I think it's really interesting. I think there's this whole, especially for like, you know, for your and our companies, like in the mobile space, I think the ability to build personal apps is like something that's never been possible and is super interesting, right? Yeah. Like, people used to talk about, oh, the app stores are dead, blah, 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 blah. Like, that's true if you're trying to go compete with WhatsApp. Like, that ship is a little bit sailed. Yeah. But it's not sailed if you want to create your own personalized chat group for a few people, or your own personalized, like, you know, a family app that just controls your family data or your family to-do list or whatever. Like, I think those things are really compelling and interesting because it lets people, again, create the tools they need to solve their problems instead of wait around for somebody else to create it for them. I think that stuff is really interesting. For kids, I think you'll see all kinds of fun stuff, right? Like, people will be creating toys and games and new social networks and new all kinds of interesting things that'll be super interesting and then hard to predict right now. Yeah. Right? Like, how would you have ever predicted all the crazy things people would have built and talked about on Tumblr, on Wix, on Squarespace, on all those things? Like, I think you had to kind of build the platforms and kind of, you know, all the creativity in the world came and, you know, exploded. Yeah. And economic disparity is a good one because I think, you know, like I said before, like there's only, I forget the exact specific stats, so don't quote me on this, but something like 80 million developers in the world, right? But there's 1 billion people who use software, right? Or more, right? 1 billion people have grown up with software and more who use it every day. Like, I think the ability to create software is something that is super important. And like, because software is going to become everywhere, it shouldn't just be possible for an elite group of people to be the ones building it. It should be possible for everyone to have access, right? Like, the comparable analogy is like, well, what if only, you know, 8% of the world's population or 2% of the world's population knew how to create fire? Like, what? Like, that's not cool. Like, everybody needs to know how to create fire. Everyone needs to know how, like, the tools we create for humanity need to be accessible to everyone. I think that's what gets me up on Saturday mornings, right? And like, is the fact that, like, you know, we're enabling people to turn their ideas into reality without having to, you know, go through some onerous process. I think more people will become software developers, but I don't think you should have to become a software developer to build an idea. So
yeah. Cool. Yeah, definitely. Obviously 100% support all those things. Okay. Fun little next prediction section here. So try to do your best to actually, kind of have some sort of date range. I know some of them, can be somewhat challenging. Again, I'm excited to see where we can draw some like
Sure.
averages and ranges of some of these guesses. All right. So first up, when do you think it'll be as common to make an app as it is to make a PowerPoint presentation or,
Mm. This is a tricky question because I hope PowerPoints are going down
right
rapidly. And so and apps
okay.
I think are going way up. So like, where's that intersection is really interesting because I want PowerPoints to die in a lot of places. I think it's very quickly. I mean, I think like, why would you present someone, like, I think in a lot of cases, like, why would you present someone something like if you could just have them experience it directly?
Yeah.
Right. Like, and I use this to, and I love these companies, by the way, but I talk shit a little bit about Envision and Marvel and these guys because it's like, why would you build something that's fake if you could build something that's real, right? Like, that's the similar, like that's a version of a PowerPoint. Like a PowerPoint is like a prototype. It's a fake. It's a visual representation. So I don't know. I would say 5 years. I think it'll be fast.
All right. And when do you think colleges will start offering classes around these types of products? And then what do you think grade school?
We have schools asking us now. So I think like even sooner, like I think schools will have these platforms, especially like design colleges will have these things, 6 months from today.
Yeah.
Right. Like it wouldn't interest me if there's people using them now. Right. Like,
I mean, it's definitely starting now, but it'll be interesting to see, like you're saying, 6 months, a year from like when we're actually starting to see curriculum kind of based on it and not just like a class trying it out,
We, just as an example for Draftbit, we have a teacher who was just trying it out the other day and was like, I want to bring this to my class. And I think funnily the issue they got to figure out is like, how do I pay for this?
Yeah.
That's the issue they have to figure out because like the school bureaucracies are the hard thing, right? It's not the platform. It's like, how do I actually allocate, some money to this thing to actually go roll out? But I think teachers want this stuff too, because I think it's a, again, certain people are going to take to learning software and logic and complicated algorithms and other people are not. And so I think there's many students out there who can build great things, but are never going to become software engineers. So,
okay, let's see. So when will there be more products launched on Product Hunt than built with like no low code versus traditional products, or sorry, built with traditional coding?
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm not sure. I think what's going to be hard about that is I'm not sure you'll know the difference, right? Like how, as a consumer, how would you ever know? Right? I think that's the cool part is that like, I don't know because I'm not sure how many are built now with no code. Like I think there's it's probably 5% of those products that get posted at least, right? It's got to be at least 5% or more of people who built something using Airtable and Zapier and Webflow, which is like, that's no code, right? Like, I don't know. It's a lot. I think I don't know when it will overtake, but I think it'll be, that's hard to predict.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I guess you're right.
Sorry.
Well, also, that was the first time I realized, like, I guess, like, we won't really be able to really know that, I guess. But I mean, maybe
there might be some way to like back into downloading the apps and like kind of try to open them up and see, but like it wouldn't be easy.
Yeah. Let's see. Okay. So this is an interesting one for you for sure. So when will, I don't know, we're in this spectrum, like this gradient right now. So like, will no code like meet up with low code, or like, are they going to keep progressing together? Like, when is there a time like the functionality that we consider low code today is just no code, or like, what's going to happen kind of there?
I think, again, I think of these things as a gradient, so it's hard to say. I think there'll be many shades of gray in between, but I think, the natural inclination of our different platforms is we will get wider, right? We will take like Draftbit, we'll take on more no code things. Other no code platforms will take on more low code things, right? Just again, the Airtable example is a great one. Yeah. Airtable for the longest time. And then like, they're, 6 years in Airtable or whatever. Now they added custom code snippets. So I think people's products will widen until they meet the goals of their customers or their segments or their users, right? And I think we all kind of like, ultimately we're just like, our users are asking for X, Y, and Z. And so that's what we like. And if we're smart, that's what we end up building. And I think the users will want, in different areas, they'll want less or more, right? Like, I think the more consumery you get, I think people don't want that much code, right? I think the more you need to build some complicated ass logic and business rules and, weird stuff, you are probably going to want some code and everything in between. So.
Let's see. When do you think we will see a product that's as popular in terms of like usage and maybe the perception in society of like, let's say a Trello or TurboTax or HelloSign that's built without or on a no code kind of platform?
Gosh, if we're doing our jobs well, hopefully soon, but I would say it takes time for those businesses to grow regardless of how their technology is built and to become that popular, right? Like, none of those businesses were built in a day. I think you'll see very popular consumer products, consumer mobile apps happen. Like, I think if I was built, this is not a great example because I think they just folded or were having trouble. But like, if you were, what's that like? What was that trivia mobile app?
Oh, HQ Trivia. Yeah.
Right. Like, I think in some future state, like a year from today or 6 months from today, or maybe 2, depending on, you could have built HQ on no code and low code platforms. And like, I don't think anybody would have ever known, frankly. Now, maybe at scale, maybe there's problems that you have to deal with that none of us have dealt with and those things. And they definitely had big scale. But I think there's, with computing resources being so cheap, like scale is a cheap problem. Like, we're just going to have 12,000 Amazon servers behind the scenes. Like, oh, okay, who cares, right? I think it'll happen sooner than it exists. I expect there are some products that, like, we just talked about launching on Product Hunt that are starting. I think B2B side, I think it'll take a little longer because I think those businesses just take longer.
Do you have any years there for those ones?
I would say within the next 2 years for a consumer product, within the next 5 years, there will be somebody who's built something. I don't know if it'll be as big as TurboTax is like,
Yeah, that's getting up there, I guess, but
that's a big thing. I think like, but you could build a Product Hunt, the actual Product Hunt itself, right? Like, I think you could build, like, that's a very popular product. I think you could build that with a no-code tool for sure.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. When will one of these first ones like IPO?
I think we should all make this a goal for it to happen in the next 10 years.
Okay.
At the very latest. That's our goal.
All right. I like that.
And I would say IPO is one thing, but like, there's that old story about WhatsApp exiting, right, with like for $1 billion or whatever millions of dollars it got with like, a few employees. Like, I think that's the future of no code, right? Is like exiting for a lot of money or building a very valuable business bootstrapping with like 3 people. That's what's super interesting, right? I think super cool. It doesn't have to be necessarily an IPO.
I like that little caveat. Okay, let's see. When will there be more freelancers or agencies and dev shops that use these platforms, like no code platforms like us, as opposed to more of the traditional route right now?
When will we reach 50% or more? I think it's going to be this one I think is going to be a slower roll because I think a lot of places, freelancers, I think it's happening now.
Yeah.
But the big dev shops, I think it will take time to change enterprise behaviors, government behaviors, like the people that really rely a lot on dev shops, very untechnical businesses. I think these things just take longer than we all hope. Because we would love it if 2 years, but I think it's much more likely to be 10, 15 years. Okay. Because I think they can become very entrenched. And some of the projects that like some of these businesses do just take 2 years, right?
True,
like if you're hiring a big dev shop. So it's like, hey, yeah.
And final one in this little prediction realm, one that I'm like super excited about. So when do you think our global leaders, politicians, presidents, those sorts of things will be like talking about this space?
Yeah, without getting into politics, I think it'll depend on the type of political leader we have. But I could see, if Obama was still president, I could see him being like very much into this, like funding innovation and some of these things. So I think he would be talking about it sooner. I think others, I don't know. I think there will be junior senators and Congress people in the US that will build apps as a way to like grow their footprint, right? Yeah. Because I think like if you look at some of the more popular but first term senators, right, of this, like they're massively using social media, but I think in 2 years or 1 year or 3 years or whatever, they'll be using tools, they'll be building all kinds of interesting stuff. And I think that's really interesting. So I think the like old senators, it's going to be a little while. Sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, they've been in Congress for 40 years. They're not really learning new things, unfortunately.
Yeah. I definitely listened to some of the, congressional hearings around Facebook and that sort of thing. So yeah.
The questions, like, it doesn't even make sense, right? Like they don't compute.
All right, cool. Let's see. And then kind of wrapping up, final question here. It's a little open-ended, but what's maybe the most inspiring story that you've kind of heard from this space, or what's the most interesting thing you've seen built? You can kind of take this flavor of this question anywhere you want, but like, what in the end, what's a like cool, exciting story about the no-code space that, kind of that you want to share?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that I have any one particular story that stands out, but I think, like we have a Draftbit user who's like pretty cool. Like he's a young kid. He's just figuring out how to like build stuff, but he's not a software engineer. And he's had this like specific app idea. He's been, just kicking around, and he's tried to build it in different places. And he tried to build it in a website form, but really he wants to be an application. He's just like, I think that's what's inspiring to me is he's kept at it. Like he's really keeping at the idea, and he's working at it. It's getting great. He's starting to get a real app, and he's going to get in the app store soon. And like, he's going to actually have progress, and he's done it all by himself. He doesn't know how to code, but he's like learned some things. He's learned how to do design. He's learned some things, and he's just like kept at it, and he's figured it out, and he's like tried different things, and he's like using different platforms and kind of hooking them together. And I think those that, again, that's not a very specific story.
Oh yeah.
Like, I don't necessarily want to reveal who he is or whatever. But like, those are the things that we get excited about when we see, because I think there's a lot of people in the no-code space that are kind of looking loose right now, like kicking the tires, but not doing a lot of stuff. And I think it's really, we love to talk to the people that are like, I've been working on this idea for 6 months and I really want to get it out there. Those are the people that we love, because they're trying to build, and they're trying to make progress. And our platforms are early and incomplete and don't always work. And, people that keep trying, also, we love them for their diligence. So
yeah. Well, yeah. All right. Well, thank you. I won't keep you any longer. Thank you so much for chatting here today. Incredible to hear, your insights on this from your perspective at Draftbit. So thank you. Thanks so much, man.
Always fun. Would love to do it again if you need to. And let's excited to see when this comes out. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, of course, man. All right. Take it easy.
Awesome. All right. Cheers.